All right, so part two. I realized I forgot to even put the subject in the stream. You had no idea what the topic was, so I hit stop. This is the official stream. Every Saturday, pretty much, we do a live stream at 2 o'clock Central Time. And my name is Mark of melovesreef.com. So this week's topic was suggested by my moderators, and they said, hey, we need you to do like a top 10 list of stocking stuffers that people could buy, which supports your company. And I thought, it's not a bad idea. So this may seem a little self-serving, but there's a reason for my madness again. It's not that I'm just trying to hammer away at sales. I'm here to educate. And I'm going to educate you guys today during the stream, I hope, with extra information. But I wanted to start off with just letting you know that, I've got so many things in my mind. All right, number one, surgery is coming up in about 17 days. Number two, my buddy Dwayne just had surgery, and the next day he was back in the ER for complications, and now he's at home. And I know he's watching the stream, and Dwayne, I hope that you continue to feel better, and I look forward to our next phone call. The reason, I promote my business is because it helps me pay the bills. And when you buy things from my website, as I mentioned before, it makes me smile and I'm happy. And I have these crazy goals in the background you're not aware of. I want to fill your orders as quickly as possible. Anything that I can knock out rapidly, I do it. Some things take a little longer, especially with my neck problems, but I've been doing my best. And I've been watching the numbers all year, and I have this goal to have 1,000 sales for the year, which I know is a really tiny number compared to so many companies out there. But for me to have 1,000 fulfilled orders in 1 year is it's sort of like one of those landmarks I've always wanted to hit. So we're really close this year, and so any order you do over the next, whatever it is, let's call it 30 days, because then there's Christmas and there's holidays and. Anyway, I'd love to hit it. If you can help me hit it, that would be great. So a lot of the things I'm talking about are actually from my shop, whether it's things I build or things I sell. And so we'll just go into that. And you can decide for yourself if you're comfortable with it or not. If you do purchase something from me and I'm able to ship it less than my website charges, I will refund the difference. So don't let some large FedEx shipping rate make you fear it unless, it's a big object. If you ordered something large, it's going to take a bigger box, it's going to weigh more, it's going to cost more to ship. I can't save you money on that. But anytime I can, I try to save money for my customers. So let's, no real particular order, I just thought we'd kind of work our way across here. So the first thing I would suggest as a stocking stuffer, or maybe 4 stockings in a row, would be a set of filters for your RODI system. I just saw someone post a picture recently where they were having problems with their tank, and then they discovered this thing was brown-black. It was so gross. And she said, oops, I haven't changed that in forever, my mistake. So make sure you replace your sediment, your 2 carbons, and your DI cartridge. I sell DI this way. It is not I don't sell loose resin where you pack it yourself. These are packed for you. And that's how I've always sold them, and that's never going to change. So this set of filters here is $55 plus shipping. The second thing I want to talk about is LiveRock Enhance. So I've been talking about it quite a bit for the last, 6 months. I've used it quite a bit too. And a lot of you have tried it out and seem to be really happy with the results. LiveRock Enhance does a few different things. The main thing is it makes your rock cleaner in your tank. Now, one of the things that it says on the product package is it can be used for curing live rock. So if you have a barrel full of rock that you're not really happy with, you could just put in a big pump, not like a maxi jet. It's a barrel of water. It's 30 to 50 gallons of water. Throw in a mag pump in there and get a lot of good circulation in there, and then add LiveRock Enhance. It takes 1 scoop per 25 gallons. This is a $20 jar. The product will eat all the garbage off your rock and make your rock look clean again, and and if you're using it in your reef tank, makes your reef tank prettier too. We have found that some people have discovered that their cyano died back. Others have seen a reduction in dinoflagellates. So it can help in those regards. I've also watched coralline really take off and start growing. So I really like this stuff, and that's one of the reasons I recommend it. The next item I want to talk about was Reef. So Reef came out probably a year and a half ago. Let's see, we're so bright here. Okay, let's do this. And this product here is a reef food. It's a very tiny powder. You mix it up in a cup of tank water and stir it up and let it wait for about 5 minutes. And then you pour it into your tank. I would turn off your protein skimmer. I would even turn off your UV if you're running one, because there's bacteria in here, there's probiotics in here, and there's this very fine food. And you want everything to eat it and not be wasted by filtration. So we don't want to kill it off. I feel like I forgot something with LiveRock Enhance. If you do run LiveRock Enhance, turn off your UV. What LiveRock Enhance will do, I'm jumping around a little bit because I got a lot on my brain. But with LiveRock Enhance, when you add it to your tank, you may see the tank get cloudy for a few hours. And that is completely normal because that's some bacteria that is blooming inside your tank temporarily as it takes hold within the system. And it can go through the entire system. You know, it can go through the Sump, the Refugium, it can go through your protein skimmer. That doesn't matter. You don't have to turn that off. You can leave it running the whole time. But turn off the UV. That was the one thing that Reef Bright told us to do. Other than that, super easy to use. It's no effort. You can just literally open the jar and take a scoop and just put it in your tank and just let it go across the surface, and you'll see these little like beads bouncing around in your tank temporarily, and you'll even see fish eating it. And fish are fine. I've had fish eat it many times. So don't fear the product. It's a good one. Phosphate RX. I've been talking about this stuff for over a decade. It is what I recommend for removing phosphate from your tank. It is so much easier than GFO. I was just talking with someone recently, and he said, you know, I started using Phosphate RX, and I love it. I cannot believe how easy it is compared to what I've always done. And this is something that I recommend you use as needed. And I've got a whole video just about this topic that you can watch. But you know, I'll summarize now because it's a live stream. The product is $28. It has 600 drops in here, which is enough for 1,000 gallons of water. So if you have a 100-gallon tank, you have like 10 doses in here in one bottle, which that's more than enough. Most people would only dose this like every 8 to 10 weeks. It's not something you use every single week. And I use it as my phosphates go up. I measured my tank a couple days ago, and if the measurement was right, it was really high, coming up on 1.0. And I thought, all right, let me put in Phosphate RX, and I did. And then last night I checked again, and it was down to 0.1. So I brought it down by 0.9 overnight. And of course, you know, I seem to get away with things that other people can't. You know, I can put something in and solve the problem, and my livestock doesn't care. But I know some people's systems are super fragile, and if you make the slightest change, they get, the corals or the fish may be more stressed. So what I want to tell you is just because the product says to use a certain amount to reduce a number, doesn't mean you have to use a full dose. It's just like years ago, I had to buy this really expensive medication from the pharmacy. I couldn't believe how much it was. And my dad said, did you know you can buy half the prescription and not fill the whole thing? And I was like, I've never heard of that. And he says, yeah, just buy the half, and then, you know, when you have more money in a couple of weeks, when you need more, you finish the prescription. I was like, oh. Or if you don't need it anymore, you just don't buy it, and you save some money instead of buying a bottle full when you only need half. And I thought, wow, okay. So anyway, my point is, if it says, for example, you need to use 100 drops, there's nothing wrong with you using 50 drops today, check your tank tomorrow, and then say, oh, I do need some more, and then you can either put in 50 more or you could put 25. In other words, you can use less and see how the tank does rather than just going with a full amount expecting some magical, you know, it's going to go from here to here. Because there's no rushing our reef tanks. These are living biotopes, and you know, we don't want to race anything. I actually dosed less than what I was required to dose, and so the fact that my phosphates came down that well was great. Another nifty thing that came out this year is from VCA. These are the vacuum attachments that you would put onto a MaxiJet pump, and then you can go ahead and you can clean out your sump by just pumping it with the MaxiJet. It'll just vacuum it in, and it goes into a filter sock or into a bucket. And you can just remove all the detritus in your tank. These are $10. These fit a stocking perfectly. And it's really neat. I know people think, well, I can print my own. I was like, yes, you can, but this is $10. I mean, is it really worth your time to go through all that hassle? So I do recommend that. Something that I build is the smartphone floater. And you put your phone right in here in this clear area, and you can just set it on the surface of the water. It'll float, and you can take pictures of your reef just touching the camera. And I sell these for $39 on the website. You can also put your phone in this direction and point the lens that way. So it's filming this way. So if you have something near the surface, you could film the side of it inside the tank and not through the wall of the tank. There may be a need for that. The other benefit of having the smartphone floater is that you can look down at your reef. Don't have to use the smartphone. You can just go ahead and look and enjoy the view from above with no ripples, no reflections. It's really nice. And finally, it's got legs on the bottom so that this doesn't get scratched when you put it down on a surface. And I've always made them this way. It's harder to make them this way. That's why no one's stolen that idea from me, because it's so much effort. But I like things that last a long time, and so that's why I make them the way I do. And you know, if you'd like to get one of these, I would be happy to do that for you. Another stocking stuffer and very popular on my website is the Nero 5 snail and fish guard. So this is a 3D printed object I get made by another company, and then VCA actually, and he prints these up and I sell them and they fit on your tank, and your pump is right here blowing water across, and everything, all the water can draw in, but none of your livestock can get behind it. And someone just recently posted how one of their fish was on the back side of it, which I think, it's not that a fish gets sucked in, I think they try to rest in that area because it looks like a perch, and then they discover they're trapped. So the snail guard is or snail and fish guard, is a really good item to put around your pump. You can just pull it off, shake off whatever is built up on it, which in my case it tends to be Valonia, bubble algae. And then when I'm done, I just put it right back on. I don't take it to the sink and scrub it. I haven't needed to. And it's worked flawlessly. I've been using one of these probably for 5 months now, maybe 6. These are $20. One of the things that Eric, one of my moderators, told me was that he loves the flipper scraper. So this is the flipper cleaning magnet with a scraper built in right here. It's a metal blade. And you can use this in your tank on either direction. So you can use the scrubby side to just clean off film algae, or flip it over underwater and use the blade to really carve things off. This is great for your standard glass aquariums. There is an attachment here in the back that is made specifically for acrylic. So if you have an acrylic tank, you would use that side. We all know the dangers of scratching a tank, and we're so cautious to avoid letting it happen. So this is one of those products that over 100,000 have been sold, so I'm pretty sure you'll be happy with it. I used one myself for cleaning off all the coralline off the black overflow box. So I just hold the one half in my hand and scrape away because it's convenient. But you can use this in your, and they come in different sizes. So I have a little tiny one, and then I have this size. And I believe they have a super size one that I don't have in stock right now. But the flipper cleaning magnet is very nice to use. And you can basically pull the magnet away from the glass, and the thing will start to float, and then you do something and it flips right back over the right direction to use the opposite side without getting your arm in the tank, which is kind of cool. So these are on my side, and I think this one is around $39. The next item, weird, is whipping through this, is the Humorous X1 Bluetooth pump. It's a dosing pump. I've been using one of these now for probably about 8-9 months since they came out. You can take the head, you can take the head off, and you can point it where the tubing goes down, or to the right, or to the left. So you have the choice of best installation on your tank, and you can set everything up in the app, and then it'll just update the actual doser, and the doser just starts doing what you need. It'll even tell you how much is left of the solution. For example, if you're hooking up a 500 milliliter bottle of something, you tell it I'm starting with 500. My dose is 60 milliliters a day, and it'll say you have, whatever the number is, 23 days worth of dosing until you have to replace that bottle. It's kind of nice to know. And these are super easy to install. You're set up in about 5 minutes flat, and this costs $60. Anything you buy from my website gets a free coaster. So you get one of these awesome coasters to put under your drinks and make yourself feel like you're part of Club Milos Reef. This is something new that came to market over the last 12 months. So it's a scraper that uses a credit card or a hotel key card or a gift card. And you can just take the card out, flip it over, and use the other side. And that way you're not replacing a metal blade. You're just using whatever plastic cards you can find on the market. And I think I thought that was pretty brilliant. And it's kind of funny because a lot of times I would try to make things out of PVC pipe with a credit card to scrape those areas where I couldn't quite get my arm in there. And then Flipper came out with this. So it's their platinum aquarium scraper. And I have lots of these in stock. And this would fit a very long stocking. And then another Flipper item is the deep sea magnifier. And this one here will hold to your tank with a magnet, and you can just view the livestock right through the lens and see things. You could stand across the room and see a close-up of your clownfish swimming around in the tentacles. Or you could look, again, you could look at some kind of an SPS coral to see the polyps moving, and even take pictures through it because it magnifies it right there on the outside of the tank. And I like it because I can put it anywhere, and actually the owner of the company has made 2 more sizes, and he was amazed that this one holds onto my 3/4 inch glass. This one's it's made for 5/8, and somehow I've made it work. Maybe because I'm using I use the force to keep it in place. The Smart ATO Micro came out several years ago. I don't know, 4 years ago. I still use this one on my Frag system. I really like this one. It's set it and forget it. If it does have a problem, it beeps. And all you have to do is just go unplug it, fix the problem, and put it back. It has its own pump. Everything is in the box. You don't have to go to Home Depot and buy a thing. You've got the tiny sensor, which is literally the size of a penny, that sits on the inside of your tank. It holds on the back of the sump or in the back of your all-in-one tank with a tiny magnet on the outside. So the sensor is inside, the magnet's on the outside, and that thing's the size of a penny too and about that thick. And you can just hold the little sensor in place. Then you put your pump that is included with its tubing that's included into a container of water. And then it'll trickle the water back into the back of your tank or into your sump as evaporation occurs. The nice thing about it is it has a anti-siphon valve in there. It is super easy, low voltage, and what else was I going to tell you? Oh, there's even the tubing that goes into your tank, there's a holder for that too to keep the tubing above the water level so it can't create a siphon and siphon water out. So like I said, this would be great for an all-in-one tank. You know, those BioCubes or maybe Innovative Marine or one of those that has a back compartment where you're constantly adding a cup of water. You could have one of these hooked up and it could add the water automatically so you don't have to do it manually. This one goes for $135. And then, of course, a lot of people like their filter socks, and I keep both the 4-inch and the 7-inch in stock. These both here are the 10 micron, which are super, super tiny pores to trap things like Phosphates Rex. I also sell the 200 micron filter socks. These are 10, and I think these are 1350. Then, if you have someone that has a really big sock they need to fill, I'd recommend the work tray. So, I was talking to Darren yesterday, and he says, man, I love the work tray. I'm so glad I ordered it, and he was telling me how he can set it up on top of his tank, put a few things in there, and just work in the tank, and then put things in the tray, and if he's got his hands wet, he's not dripping all over the floor because it's mounted right above the aquarium. So this would not work on a small tank, obviously, because look how big this is. It's like 14 inches by 12. But for someone with a big tank, you know, like 90 gallons. Actually, you know, it fits my 60-gallon Frag system. It fits right on the top between the rim. But a 90, a 120, a 240, a 180, a 300, a 400, a 600. This will go in any tank that is large enough to hold it in the first place. And you use PVC pipe to put it where you need it. So basically, you know, in my tank, this is 3 feet wide. So I need a couple of pipes that are around 32 inches long. And they just sit on the Euro brace. I just feed them through the 2 holes and set it on top, and I can roll it back and forth across the top of my tank as I'm working from one end of the tank all the way across to the other. And I can put tongs in here, cutters in here, my little tube of glue, frag plugs. The other day I did a really quick video where I showed you guys taking all the corals out of my tank and putting them in the work tray. I came up with this thing, I don't know, a year ago, I guess, 9 months ago. The newer one is even nicer than this. This is the prototype I made for myself. But, you know, it's got all these holes as you're working and it drips through. You know, it's not going to be just filled up with water. And I also made the new one with extra holes that are larger that can hold frag plugs. So you can actually mount the plugs in there and then set your corals in place, let the glue cure for a few minutes, and then take it out and plant it in your reef. So the work tray is super convenient for those of you that are liking to work over your tank and have no area to put anything down. Now you have this temporary tray. And if you have different size tanks, all you need is different size PVC pipe lengths for the different systems. So on a smaller frag tank, you need a 2-foot pipe. You know, on a bigger tank, you need a 3-foot pipe. I designed it that way so you can cut the pipe you need to the length you need. You just need the work tray. So this one I think goes for $65. And then if you feel like you have to really make someone happy because they've been especially good this year and you thought, I want to blow them away. First thing you have to do is get a really big Christmas stocking. And then you want to fill it up with one of these. So this is the Apex. This is the full controller that would take care of an aquarium. It has the power bar inside, the energy bar. It has all the probes, and it has the brain, of course. This is a great way to maintain your tank and know what's going on with it and keep up to date with your tank by just opening up your phone and looking at your browser. And you can log into Apex Fusion and see the temperature. You can get notifications if there's a problem. You can turn things on and off with your cell phone. I've been running the Neptune system gear since 2004. And I switched over to this version of the Apex just before I installed the Trident. And that's it. You need this one to run the Trident too. So if your significant other is hoping to get a Trident, they're going to need one of these anyway. So I do have a couple of those in stock. Those are $800. And then the last item I'm going to talk about, see, this isn't going to go on forever, is of course the Peacemaker. So this one is mine. I just built it for myself and showed it to you guys a few streams ago. The Peacemaker is a big, hard acrylic box with a lot of holes drilled in it, and it hangs inside my tank on the Euro brace on each end. That's why it has this huge piece on the top. So it just sits in the tank like this for about 3 days, and a new fish is sitting inside the box, and everyone can see each other, but there's no fighting. And it creates peace in the tank, and after 3 days, you can just take the box, remove the lid. This is hard to do on camera. But remove the lid and just pour the fish into the tank. It's that simple, and then clean it up and put it away till later. I make these to be super sturdy. This is not some cheesy little thin thing. The material is very thick and very durable. It's got a recessed top that the lid fits into. This is not acrylic, this is polycarbonate, so it won't warp. It's clear on purpose so your lights can still shine through and light your reef so you don't create a big shadow underneath. And it's a pretty big box. This is 12 long, 6 wide, 8 inches tall. So if a little bit of it's above the water, you still have about 6.5 to 7 inches inside the water. And I've been using, I came up with my first one in 2011. And I still have that one. Matter of fact, I wanted to mention, I didn't bring it over here to show you guys, but the original prototype is not as nice as what you just saw now. But I was going to throw it away. And then I thought, maybe somebody wants that thing. So what I'm going to offer, the Peacemaker is $100. I'm going to offer to sell the old one, and I'll modify it to fit your tank. As long as it's one that needs that top piece, I can make it, because it's for a big tank, I can make it shorter to fit your tank. I can modify it down and clean it up as best I can, and I could sell it for 50 bucks. And if you're interested in that, please contact me directly through the Contact Us on melovesreef.com. But I thought, why am I throwing it away? I'm sure someone could use this thing. I know it's not as nice as the brand new ones I make in 2019, but there's nothing wrong with the one I have. It's just I made myself a nicer one. So if someone's interested, feel free to let me know. All right, I believe I covered everything I wanted to talk about in goodies. A couple other things that was recommended on the list of things to consider to throw inside a stocking stuffer would be test kits, and I have the ELOS test kits in stock. Another thing that you might want to consider getting is new heaters, because heaters can fail and need to be replaced every so often. Don't just wait for them to work until they're dead. You just have to at some point stop and say, okay, let me check this out. How old is this? How long have I had this thing? And let me replace it. Anything else? Other things that I saw on my website are t-shirts. So if you're looking for t-shirts, I have a company that drop ships them, and you can pick the shirt you like and the size, and then I take your order, and then it comes to you a few days later. So I think that's pretty much everything. I hope that you found that semi-interesting. It was actually a pretty good topic. And it would be nice for me to hit my goal of 1,000 customers this year. That would be pretty impressive. And it would be a first. So I would like to hit it, but ultimately it's up to you if I'm going to do that or not, right? All right, let me take a sip. All right, so at this point, we've been going for about 30 minutes. This is where we open up to the question and answer period. Also, if you're just tuning in for the very first time to our live stream, I want you to know that we usually have a topic for about the first 30, 45 minutes, and then we go into question and answer. So if you see a big long video that on my website or on YouTube that says 2.5 hours long, it's just us talking and answering questions and asking questions back and forth that I cover, and I cover a lot of extra information that may come in useful. These little nuggets of truth just keep dropping throughout the show. And so a lot of people like to just listen to the show while they're working on their tank, or they'll listen to it while they're driving to or from work. And so that's why I do these super long live streams. It's not that I'm going to talk about one topic for 2.5 hours and drive you bonkers. Alrighty. So my first question seems to be, Rosano says, I tested my fresh RODI water in my 32-gallon Brute can, and phosphates measured 0. I added salt mix, and the phosphate measured 0.08. Is this normal? Actually, it's kind of impressive that you were able to measure 0 phosphate in RODI water, because DI water is deionized, and it can throw off a test kit. I would think that maybe other contaminants are in the barrel. It might be time to clean the barrel. Just give it a bleach scrub, which is 10 parts water to 1 part bleach, and just scrub it down, rinse it well, let it air out for 24 hours, and try to make a new batch and see if the same thing happens. I wouldn't expect you to get phosphates from a new batch of salt water that you've mixed up. I don't believe salt mix comes with phosphate included, not even a little bit. So I would double check that way. Or maybe just take the test one more time and double check your readings and see if it was correct. Also, it depends what you're measuring with. If you're using like Saliford or Elos or Red Sea, you'll get one kind of result. You use the Hanna checker, you may get something different, especially if you have the ultra low one that measures parts per billion. So that's something to keep in mind. Let's see. Cindy says she's stuffing her own stockings. That's perfect. Mr. Reef Buster, I totally disagree with you. It is not crap. There was a Smart ATO and there was a Smart ATO Micro, and the Smart ATO had problems. That's why they stopped selling it. The Micro still exists because it's that good. I have not run into a problem with it. You may need to clean off the sensor occasionally with a toothbrush because it has to be able to see the water line. Other than that, I've had no problems with pumps. I mean, like I said, I've been running it for years without having to replace any parts. And he says the controller died on his within a year. Pretty sure they're under warranty. Did you try to reach out to CoralView for a warranty replacement? Because it might have been covered. I mean, things can go wrong for someone occasionally. It's not going to be 100% for everyone, that's for sure. Andrew says, I'd like to get one of your sumps and refugiums and an ATO reservoir at some point in the future. Your site doesn't have anything to fit my 244-gallon tank. What would be a custom build? Well, that's the thing. That's why we reach out and talk to each other in person. And that way I can find out exactly how much space you have inside your stand. And we can determine what will fit. I need to know what protein skimmer you're going to use, how big a refugium you're hoping for, how many gallons of top-off water you want to have. These are, most of those type of products that I'm building, sumps and top-off containers, are not a standard size. I actually build them custom to the exact size that fits the customer's setup. I posted a picture of a sump earlier this week that I built for a customer who's local, and we used up exactly the space. He had very specific limitations. It must be 51 inches long and it has to be 17 and a half wide, and I did exactly those dimensions to make sure that it would fit his setup. And so that's what we would do with yours. We would just look at your entire situation, figure out the right water levels for the different heights of equipment so that everything operates correctly, and come up with a perfect plan. Oh yeah, I tried something different with the tank. So, each time we try it, the tank always looks blown out and it was bothering me. So what I did was I have a rolling light rack on the ceiling that hangs over the tank, and I pushed it back about 1.5 feet to kind of light behind the tank instead of blasting the tank, hoping that this area here would not be blown out white like it always is. So the next light will turn on in, I don't know. Actually, it's come on. It's already on. So the middle light is on too, and the third one will join here in a little bit. But I thought maybe it would look better during the broadcast, so I thought we would try it this time and see what it does. And then, of course, I can just roll it back over the tank when we're done with the stream. Gideon says, do you have any thoughts on a clam yet? Well, I haven't been shopping for one, if that's what you mean. I've been kind of focused on getting my neck fixed, and I'm kind of holding off on buying things for the tank. Right now, I just want to keep the tank happy, make sure everything is up to date on it, that there's no weird surprises, so during my recovery, I'm not dealing with issues with my tank. It's sort of like preparing your tank before you go on a trip, except I'll be here. And I just want to make sure everything's tip-top shape, clean, running well, and that I'm prepared for whatever thing could happen. So that's pretty much my weekly routine, but it seems even more important now with me about to have surgery. Cindy, you're funny. She says, I need one of those peacemakers for the office. Do you make a human size? You can trap someone in a box of holes until they behave. I kind of like that. That's great. Let's see. Michael asks, do you sell the 3/8 inline TDS meter? I can't seem to find one in the UK. No, all the ones I have are for 1/4" tubing, the inline ones, and then I have the handheld. So no, I'm sorry, I don't have anything for 3/8. And that, I mean, the probe on the inline TDS meter is for 1/4". If you could insert some kind of a sleeve into your 3/8 to reduce it to 1/4 to slide the probe in, then that meter could work, if there's such a thing. Or you would have to have some kind of a John Guest fitting that's 3/8, 3/8, 1/4" on the top. So it's a T that's 3/8, 3/8, and 1/4". And if you could do that, then it would work. But because the probe fits into a John Guest fitting, but it fits into a 1/4" hole. Callie says, can we see your sump? It's not that I don't want to show it to you, and so I don't have a camera set up for it other than this, and I was like, it's under there. But what I would say is that stay tuned, because the video about the 6-year anniversary of my tank is about to drop, and when it does, you can see the sump in that video. So, and it'll look a lot better than it will on a live stream. With live streams, things are a little bit more blurry or pixelated, and when I upload, you know, my videos, they're 4K, so it'll look a lot nicer. So let's just hold off. Tien asks, do you have the Reef lens for sale? And he's from, is it, are you from Syracuse, or is it from Syracuse? I have the Coral View lens, which, this is my kit that I use. It's from Polyp Labs, and I use these whenever I'm doing any of my photography of my, with my iPhone. And I sell these, yes. I should have put one over here on the table. That was a good one, a great stocking stuffer. And I sell those for, I think $30. Might be off, might be 35. Tyler says, do you have any information for elegance coral syndrome? I think mine has it, but I can't find any information online. Yeah, actually, I can tell you exactly where to look. Go to reefkeeping.com and search their archives to something back like in 2003, 2004, 2005, maybe as far back as 2002. But in those years, there was definitely a huge write-ups about elegance corals because we had a really hard time across the nation trying to keep them alive, and we thought they were coming in with some kind of an infection. So there was a really good write-up, and the author is Eric Borneman. So that gives you a name, you got a topic, and you've got reefkeeping.com, which is an online magazine that published his works. So I would look there for the answer to your question. And good luck. Oh, I see Christine just put the link up for the Coral View lens. Thank you. How do I say that? Kulina said, do you wait for a heater to malfunction or die before you replace it, or do you like to update them after a certain amount of time? I actually wait for them to die. It's because I have 3 in my sump. And so if one is to fail, that doesn't hurt my system because the other 2 are doing their best to keep up. But I'll notice that the temperature of the tank is dropping off slowly, and I can go investigate and see what's happening because the Apex that I was showing you guys keeps track of everything. And it has logs and it has graphs, and you can see energy consumption. And so, you know, I have 3 300-watt heaters. That's 900 watts it's pulling. And if it shows in the graphs that it's only pulling 600 watts or 580 or some number like that, I'm like, oh, one of the heaters isn't working, so let me investigate and find which one has failed, and I replace that one. I personally like the Ebo Jaeger. I've used Cobalt. Actually, I still have a Cobalt heater as well. So those are 2 brands that I like to use. The Ebo Jaeger is a long glass heater. A lot of people will swear by the titanium heaters, but you have to have a controller with them. In my case, the Apex is my controller. It controls all my heaters. And if the tank gets too cold, it tells the heaters, or it actually opens up the power to the outlets that the heaters are plugged into. And then when the tank gets the right temperature, it kills the outlets so that the heater can't keep heating. And then on the heater itself, I adjust the knob just slightly more than my controller setting. So for example, if I wanted to get my tank up to, in the Apex I might say 78.5, then I might set the dial on mine to come on, to stay on all the way to like 79 or 79.5. I mean, I can't see the number, but I can watch the little light on the side of it. And what I do with any heater I use, I never trust the number on the dial. Never, ever, ever do I trust it. I don't recommend anyone do that. Put the heater in the water, let it get acclimated for 10 minutes or so till everything's equalized. Then plug it in, and then you will twist the knob on the end back and forth, and the light will come on and off, and on and off, and on and off. And you just keep dialing back and forth until you know the sweet spot, that is what the tank temperature is right now. And then you can measure your tank and say, okay, my tank's 76, I really want 78. Then you can turn the dial up 2 degrees. It doesn't matter what the number says on the heater, you just want to be 2 degrees hotter than what it is right now. And then of course, you want to check on the tank, I don't know, an hour or two later, and if you're up to 78, look at the heater, and if the light is off, it's working perfectly. Another very important rule of thumb when it comes to heaters, never oversize a heater. Don't get one too big for your tank. That's so important. I can't emphasize it enough. Do not get an oversized heater or use an oversized heater in a temporary tank because you can kill your livestock like that. I would rather you get 2 heaters that are combined enough wattage to match your tank. So whatever tank size you have, the typical average amount of wattage you need is 3 watts per gallon. So if you have a 100-gallon tank, you need 300 watts of heat. And you would then take that and divide by 2. So you need 2 150-watt heaters. And that way you have 300 watts. And you plug those into a controller of some kind. And don't just rely on the internal sensor of the heater to be absolutely trustworthy, because it can fail. And if a heater fails the on position, it can overheat the tank, which drops the oxygen, which kills the fish. Hope that helped. Glenn says, I'd like to ask your personal opinion about the Nero 5 Powerhead. It's quite powerful and overall performance is good, as you've had one for a year, and many thanks. Yeah, actually I have. I've had it for over a year. I like it a lot. Mine's starting to make a weird noise from time to time. I don't know what it's doing. I've taken it apart to clean it, and then I put it back together and I put it in and it seems fine. And then I'll just hear like this strange noise. It might even be the programming, like it's set to some crazy high level that I don't know how that happened, but maybe I need to check that. But I found the solution is unplug it and plug it in, and it goes right back to normal. So what I'm thinking is I better order a new one to have ready for when this one goes out, because maybe that's a symptom of a Powerhead that's going bad. I don't know. But other than that, no, I love it on there, and I want to replace it with another one of the same. I like it that much. And for any of you that haven't seen my video that did a review about it, check it out. It's not only super convenient because you can put it anywhere in your tank and it holds on magnetically to the glass or the acrylic. You can angle it slightly if you like to angle it. What I really like the most is when you're cleaning the glass with one of your cleaning magnets and you're trying to go around this pump, you can actually pull the pump out of your way, do a quick cleaning, and pop it back into place. Or you can hold it in your hand and shoot it at your entire rockwork and blast all the detritus off the rockwork and into the suspension so that your skimmer and filter socks can remove the waste. And it comes with a crazy long wire, so you really have a lot of freedom to move that Powerhead throughout the reef, blow everything off really, really good, and then pop it back into place on the magnet. Super deal. I really do like that pump a lot. Cindy says, would the micro pump be good for a 90-gallon tank? Yeah, it would work on that too. Mine's running on the 60. They're designed for small little tanks, but I used it on the 60 and I've had no problem whatsoever. I believe it has an internal thing that if it runs too long, it will beep and warn you like it ran 5 minutes straight and shouldn't have. Top off should never take that long. And the neat thing is the way it shoots the water into the sump, it goes in so fast, so furiously, that it's like a beam of water instead of a trickle. You don't hear it going in. It's like doosh, and just puts in this, it looks like an acrylic rod hitting the water, and there's no sound because it's pretty close to the surface, but really neat how it works. And I haven't heard mine beep in forever, so like I said, it's been super, super reliable, and that's why I continue to sell it. I really like that product. I pretty much, anything that I'm selling in my shop is something I believe in because I feel like it passed the test. It did good enough that I like it, I want to use it, so I'll sell it. Which means I should be selling the Nero 5 pump. I need to find out about getting those. Let's see. You're right, Josh. I need to feed these guys some nori. This cord's too short. I'm going to unplug the microphone for a second, protect your ears. Alrighty. A quick update. I have been putting in a sheet of nori pretty much every single day in my tank now for some time. And I haven't seen any improvement on my cold tang yet, which is kind of a bummer. I mean, I know it'll take a long time, but it just doesn't look even slightly better. So I might actually have to remove that fish and put it in some kind of hospital tank with some kind of medication. And as you guys know, I am not a fish disease person, and I have no idea what to use. So we'll have to see. But you can see the fish are ready. Now there's a snail on here. Not for long. So I put the food in the clip and I really squeeze the clip really hard to make sure it grabs onto the food. And then I put it back in the tank. That big piece is about to pull off. Let's see. I think I'll put the sheet of foam back up. There we go. That looks better. So you can watch them eat a little bit of food. Spock, you have a mouthful. Chew your food. Marine Life says, how many corals can I put in a 20-gallon tank? Well, I would say 20. 20 frags. But actually, realistically, no matter what size tank you have and what corals you want to buy, you'll end up over time as the tank matures and fills in, you'll have a small number of dominant corals. I mean, it's possible to jam in a ton of little tiny things, but eventually those tiny things get bigger. And as they grow out, they take up more and more space. And I'm trying not to block the fish. And the corals will sting each other. They'll cover too much territory, and you end up with 5 or 6 dominant species in the tank. So if you keep pruning it and keeping them small, you can have more in that tank. It's nice, there's no limit to how many corals you can put in a tank. There's not like some rule that says you may only do 1 per gallon or something like that. There's no such thing. You can pretty much go nuts with corals. And you have to also keep in mind, what are you putting in the tank, which types of corals, and what are their feeding requirements, what are their flow requirements, what are their lighting requirements, what are their water parameter requirements. So there's a lot to consider, but that's kind of the quick answer to your question. KD says, what's wrong with your neck? Welcome to the stream. So 4 years ago, I had surgery on my neck, and they put in an artificial disc. They actually physically called it a bionic disc. And they put it in there to replace a bad disc in my neck where the bones are getting too close together. And it got rid of a lot of migraines, and I recovered. And about 5-6 months ago, my pain level just shot way up. It was really bad. I went and saw my doctor. She immediately rushed me off to get an MRI. And there's real problems inside the discs above it. So I need to get those repaired, and someone's got to go in there and clean it all up and put more discs in there to fix what's gone bad so that I can live another 30 years in happiness instead of misery. So that is a big deal, and I cannot wait to get it fixed and get back to feeling normal again. Because I mentioned the pain. It's also affected my productivity with work because it's been so hard for me to work. It's even been hard for me to think about working. Like when I've got things cut out ready to glue, and it was like a mental hurdle to get off the ice pack, to get off the medicine, to get up and clean the edges and start gluing and to focus intently on something as I'm building it. Hard to do when you're really hurting. And the thing is, I say the neck, and I probably look completely normal to you. The pain actually emanates from the spot right between my shoulder blades. And it's awful. It's like someone's got a knuckle and they're jamming it in, and they never let off, and it just presses in there all the time. And I can take a huge deep breath, like really fill up my lungs, and it almost like pushes my spine back a little bit. It makes me feel a little bit better. I've done all kinds of exercises, to like pull my neck back, to kind of stretch these muscles here. So basically what's happening is, because there are problems with the actual skeleton, the bone structure, I'm using all my muscles to hold my head up instead of the bones that everyone relies on. And so all of my muscles are, under definition, are spasming, which is weird because to me, a spasm is like a muscle pulls and comes back. Mine are like pulling and never letting go. And they still call that a spasm. So it's been awful. And a lot of people on this channel have been super supportive, understanding that it's going to take me a little longer to get things out. But I hope to put that behind me and be a normal guy where you don't have to coddle me so much, if that makes sense. Aftershock says, I'm doing a full tank transfer and don't want to use my old sand as its crushed coral. That's good. How can I remove the nefarious snails from the old sand? Actually, I think the simplest thing would be is to put some food in the tank, because you know how they all emerge from the substrate, to get some food, and then grab them and put them in some kind of a holding container or a peacemaker or a net that you've got dangling in the tank to keep them nice and wet. And that way, when you do tank transfer, you've got them separated from the substrate. And of course, when you remove the substrate, you can definitely sift through it and look for anything else you might have missed. You might have missed a straggler or two, and rescue them as well. But I think the simplest one is food. Use it like bait to get them to the surface. And good luck with your transfer. Aaron says, how big should a refugium be for a 200-gallon system? The bigger the better, but a lot of us suffer from space constraints where there's not a lot of space to use. And so I really like to recommend 10%. So if you have a 200-gallon tank, I'd like to see a 20-gallon refugium on that system, if at all possible. Now, a lot of people are taking a section of the full sump to be the refugium, but when you look at it mathematically, that zone may only be holding 6 or 8 gallons, not the 20 that I'm recommending, which is one of the reasons the sumps that I build have a taller refugium baffle, and that refugium's at the end of the sump, so it can have more water in it, and it pours through teeth into the return zone. And the other end is all the filtration, which is like filter socks, Claricy roller, protein skimmer, reactors, all that kind of stuff, heaters. But the refugium's over here, and it's taller, so it can have more water in it. But you can also have a separate tank, like a literal vessel that is all refugium, like a 40-gallon breeder that's on a stand, and it drains into maybe somewhere near the return zone, and so you have water pumping into it. It is a secondary tank you could look at. You might want to enjoy. You could make it pretty. You could make it like a planted tank, but it's macroalgae, and have more refugium for your 200-gallon system. Triton would recommend a giant sump with a huge refugium. I bet they would recommend for that size tank maybe something as big as 50 gallons or 40 gallons of refugium, then a smaller section for the protein skimmer, and then a return pump. I prefer not to skim what's coming out of the refugium, so that's why I put the refugium at the opposite end, the skimmer at the other end, and the two waters can meet in the middle and then pump back up to the tank. Katie, nope, I don't have a black and yellow Tang in here. I have 2 yellow Tangs, and I have a purple Tang, and I have a cold Tang. And I have Spock right there. That's Spock going away. Yeah, I will never buy a black Tang. I don't find them to be especially beautiful, and I've discovered that they're very hard to photograph. It's like trying to take a picture of a shadow. So I don't enjoy that fish personally. I don't, there's just nothing about it that appeals me. I would prefer to see like the gem Tang, which basically looks like a Tang covered in ick. And the gem Tangs have come down in price significantly. Those used to be like $1,500, and I've seen pricing around $400 to $600. It's still too much, but it's better than it was. It's almost down 2/3. And I think it's because they either found a new place to find them, or maybe they're being propagated. Maybe they're being grown out. I have a feeling it's just they found a new spot. Because I heard the reason the gem tang was so expensive is it came from an area of the world, let's just call it Indonesia, because I don't know off the top of my head. But let's just say the Indonesian government said, yes, you can export that fish to America and people can have it, but there's an $800 tax. So you've got the tax you have to pay the government, transportation to get it to the US, and then whatever the fish store marks it up, which is probably why they were like $1,500. Probably half the money went to the government over there because it supports their governmental structure through tariffs. So I think they found some new area where they can collect them that doesn't have that tax, and that's why the price came down. That's the rumor I heard. I've never researched to see if that's absolutely true, but it doesn't sound too far-fetched to me. I could see that being absolutely true. Aftershock says, what is the best sand to use in a high-flow 200-liter reef with SPS and wrasses? I would say Tropic Eden's Reef Flakes, and that's what's in this tank right now. And matter of fact, I just talked about this in last week's live stream about let's talk about deep sand beds and keeping them clean. So check that out. Also, you can go to milasreef.com/DSB, and you can see the grains up close. You can see the packaging. Premium Aquatics sells it, and it's a very good sand. It's the sand I've been using now for 9 years. Aaron says, we're back to the human-sized peacemaker. Can you make a spouse peacemaker for when you come back from the fish store or from a show? Because you want to protect yourself from being attacked, no doubt. It's pretty funny. When we were kids and our parents got a new appliance, like a refrigerator or a washer-dryer, it came in a huge box, and you would play in it for hours. You loved it. Well, I'm suggesting you get a new appliance and save that box for those emergency days when you need to peacemaker your spouse away. I don't know what we're talking about. Reef glasses, Mr. Reef Buster? Are you talking about the orange glasses that make everything glow? I don't sell them. I get them at Aquashella, but they make everything look so good. Super dangerous when you're walking past vendors selling corals. But if you meant something else, let me know what you meant. Shane, I really do prefer the glass heaters over titanium. Titanium is fine. It's just another type of heater. I just use glass. That's what I choose to use. But a lot of people swear by titanium. But what's so important is not the heater itself, it's the controller. You got to have a controller of some kind. Years ago, we used something called Renko. Then Cobalt came out with something that you could plug your heater into. But the Apex does it, so I always recommend the Apex because that not only controls the heaters, it controls everything. So it's sort of like, yeah, it's an upfront cost, but it takes care of itself. And now as more things are getting connected to the Apex, it's becoming more and more of a tank saver. There was a guy recently who had a problem, and his Trident, which is that device that measures the alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium, one of the numbers was shooting up, or it was dropping. It was one or the other. Either bottomed out or it went up really high, but he investigated and discovered that the tubing that he uses to dose into a system had clogged up. I guess it had dropped like a rock. So it had clogged and no more alkalinity could be added. And he said that right there just made the Trident pay for itself because I saved my entire reef, which a lot of people have a lot of money tied up in coral fragments because they buy high dollar corals. And so having a controller that can notify you when there's a problem, that can trigger a red light that flashes right in the room next to the tank. There's so many things you can do to protect your reef from a disaster if you do the initial buy a controller part. That's so hard for a lot of people. Like, why would I need a controller? I don't need it. I've gone fine all these years without one. It's true, but when something goes wrong, then you're thinking, wow, so if I got that controller, that never would have happened, or I could have been warned sooner. Like, yeah. And then they start to think about it. It's sort of like you have a beautiful home, you fill it up with beautiful things, somebody breaks in and steals all your stuff, and then you buy the home alarm. Everyone buys the alarm after they're robbed. Instead of getting the alarm system and setting the alarm system and using it to protect your system. And I've had an alarm in this house since the day I moved in, and there was someone that tried to break in one time many years ago through the back door. And I was asleep, my son was asleep in the other room, and we didn't hear anything And then the alarm just started blaring. And I was like, and I was thinking in my head, because my son was a teenager, I'm sure he's out front making out with his girlfriend and didn't turn off the alarm when he went outside to see her. And so I was just like lying there waiting for the noise to stop. I thought, really? I'm going to have to get up and turn off this alarm? Are you kidding me? And so I finally said, all right. And I pulled the covers back and I got up and I'm opening the door for my bedroom and my son's walking by and he's like, I got it. And I said, you're not outside? And he's like, no, I heard the alarm too. So I got up. So we turned on every light in the house and we looked at everything. And it seemed like it was a false alarm. There was no anything. We didn't see any issue. But the next morning, and so we reset the alarm. We went back to bed. We were annoyed. The next morning, we had to go out the back door. And the door, when I pulled on it, it kind of burst out of the frame. The glass didn't shatter, but the frame was like bent. And I looked at it, and it looked like someone had kicked the hell out of it that night before, and which I'd never heard. So clearly, the sound of the alarm going off protected us. It made the guy run away. We got lucky. And the police came out, and he says, yeah, someone absolutely tried to break into your house. And he's like, you should have called us. And I was like, we didn't know there was something happening. But yeah, so having an alarm in your home, smart. Having a controller in your tank, which is an alarm in itself, is smarter because this is life and death. Everything in here is replaceable. So, I would definitely recommend a controller. Long spiel, I know. Zach is asking questions about DIY frag plugs. I have a feeling there's probably someone on YouTube that's done a video showing how to do that. I've never done it. I just get them. Usually I get somebody given to me for free. As I travel, I come across stuff, or I'll see them at a trade show and I'll buy a few. I have a bucket full of frag plugs. I've never tried to make my own. There's a new one that just came to market. I might have it here on the table. No, I think it's in there. Yeah, here it is. I do have it. So this is something new I saw at Macna. It's kind of cool. Stocking stuffer. So this is called the Frag Gripper. And the website is called reefstew.com. So the Frag Gripper uses a 3D printed plastic piece that then sits on a frag plug. And it's all included in the bag. Except for, I've got glue in here, so don't count that because that was me. But here's your little gripper. And he also includes a pipette, which at first I wondered, why is there a pipette in there? And then you've got the frag plug. He's going to love that I'm talking about this on YouTube. So the way it works, you take the pipette. I'm going to take this off the screen for a second here. You take the pipette with scissors and you cut off the top of the bulb. And then you cut some slits into this so that it can allow you to insert something into the center of it. Does that make sense? Then you've got your gripper. You will slide the pipette through it with the frag sitting inside this part. And you pull it through like a sleeve, and the frag will now be inside the center. And then when you've got your frag held in place by those 4 little arms, you can then just press this onto here, and now you have a frag plug you can set in your reef. So you don't have any glue, you don't have to use any putty. It just held on with a gripper. Kind of neat, right? So you get this kit. There's probably 10 in a bag or something like that. And I tried it out with some new frags I got, and it held them perfectly. It was really interesting. And then because there's so many little holes in there, I had one that was like a bunch of little pieces. So I put one in the center. I still had more little pieces. So I actually put a drop of glue inside the holes and put the other little twigs in there to kind of make a bush. And I thought that was really kind of neat. I didn't expect it to be that fun. So the Frag Grippers are a pretty cool product that, like I said, is being sold by reefstew.com. All right. What else did I miss? Callie asked the question, do you use another temp controller between the apex and the heater? No. The apex will do everything I need. It is the controller. And that's sort of like saying, I got a Renko controller for my heater, and I'm getting a Renko for the Renko. You don't need to daisy chain controllers, because then it's a point of failure if something goes wrong. But the apex will do it. It's been controlling my heaters, like I said. When I had the Aqua Controller 2, it was multiple heaters, and it controlled them perfectly on the 280. I never had a problem with that tank with temperatures. And then I upgraded to the Apex that we now call the Apex Classic, and it controlled the different heaters I used on this size tank. And then I replaced it with the new Apex, which is technically Apex 2016 because that's when it came out. But that is now officially, when somebody says I have an Apex, they have the 2016. And if you have the older one, you say I have the Apex Classic. So nope, that's the controller you need. I'll see. I was trying to understand what Jay was meaning here. So he says, whenever I go to the fish store for frozen food, my girlfriend asks, so how much did you spend? Do you do the same thing when she goes to the diamond store? I'm just curious. So I say I got frozen food, and then she asks, what's floating in the tanks? That's pretty funny. Rosano says he's had really good experience with the fluval heaters that have a 5-year warranty. I don't know. It's not a brand I've used, but matter of fact, I saw this. Let me see if I can find these really quick. This is actually kind of cool. So give me a second here to find this. What's the easiest way? I guess I'll just scroll back in time. I was in New York recently, hanging out in a Petco, of course. And they had some little heaters. And when I say little heaters, like, they are adorable. All right, I found... Okay, let's switch this. No. How do I get to... Oh, I see what I'm doing wrong. So this is a little tiny heater that is only 10 watts. I mean, it is itty bitty tiny. And then you can see, well, you see two of them side by side there. I believe this was a slightly larger one. This is 25 watts. No, I'm sorry, 75 watts. No, 7.5 watts and 15 watts. That's what it says. So why would you ever need these tiny little itty heaters? That's why I wanted to show them to you. Well, if you are doing something like I'm doing and you're using safety stop, you would need to keep the water in that bucket the right temperature for 45 minutes. So I would recommend these little heaters because you can plug it in. It doesn't have a controller. It doesn't have any wattage to do any damage, but it can keep that gallon of solution the right temperature. So a tiny little heater, that little 7.5 watt or the 10 watt one would be more than enough for the gallon, and just keep it stable for the 45-minute bath. And then you would just rinse it in some water and put it in part 2 of safety stop and move the fish over as well. And now that's the right temperature. And that way the water's not cooling off for 45 minutes and then you put into a new bucket of solution. And if you're doing any kind of acclimation and you feel like the water is cooling off, that little tiny credit card heater would be perfect. And so I wanted to recommend that. I also wanted to show you guys, since I was there, they sell silicone that's made for aquariums. So a lot of people are always like, oh, what can I use? Well, Aquarium makes a brand made specifically for aquariums that you can totally trust. And the tubes are about $12, so they're marked up for the aquarium trade. You can find a similar version from DAP that is made for aquariums. It says it right on the package at Home Depot for I think $5 or $6 a tube. Maybe it's $7. But always use the ones that are made for aquariums. I don't recommend using the ones that fits in a caulk gun because those are going to be just regular GE silicone, and so many people mix those up, use the wrong one, and have problems with their livestock. So always get one that says right on the package for aquariums. And if you look on it and it says not for aquariums, do not use it. Whoops, sorry. There we go. And I also found, we were talking about cleaning magnets. They had these little adorable cleaning magnets here. So I thought that was pretty cool. For those of you with really small tanks, for $22, you can clean the glass and keep your hand dry. So thought you'd find that interesting. Anything else I had from that day? No, I guess that's it. All right, Let's go to the next question. Hi, Darren from England. Nice to meet you. I don't know what this says. Do you add in the sump water for your heater or just the tank amount of water? Oh, now I know what you mean. Are you adding all the water of the system to determine how many watts of heater you need? Yes. So in my system, I have a 400-gallon aquarium. I have a 60-gallon anemone cube. I have a 150-gallon sump. You would think I'd have, oh, you got like 600 gallons of water. No, I do not. I have 450 gallons of water. The inside of this aquarium holds maybe 320 gallons of water. My sump has about 80 gallons of water in it at any given time, and then the frag tank probably has about 50 gallons of water in it. So mathematically, I say my total system volume is 450 gallons, and I would do that times 3 watts per gallon to get my total wattage. So I would pretty much need like 1,200 watts, but I've been doing just fine with 900 watts rather than having one more on there. If I had 4 300-watt heaters on the system, that would be more of a draw on the circuit. I mean, you'd be pulling 12 amps. And most breakers are either 20 amps or 15 amps. And so pulling 12 just with heaters could be quite a load. And I haven't seen the need. I checked with some other people a while back because I was thinking, well, what if I had added another heater? So now instead of using 900 watts to heat the water, I can use 1,200. Will that make the heaters run less long? And will it save me money in electricity? And it turns out that watts are watts. And if you use 900 watts, you're going to use it for this long. It's going to cost you this much. If you use 1,200 watts, you're going to use it for this long, and it's going to cost you this much. But you're not going to suddenly save money because, like, let's say I jumped to 1,800 watts, and I did it in 30 minutes flat instead of an hour and a half. Would I save money? No, because I used 1,800 watts for 30 minutes. So it turns out it would completely equalize out, so that's why I didn't even worry about it, and I've been using just the 3 heaters. And actually, for the summer, I have one of them disabled. So I have 2 heaters. And then in the winter, especially in those cold nights where we're down in the 10s or in the 20s, I'll add the 3rd heater in to make sure everything's able to keep up during the late night hours in case the house gets a little too cool for some reason. Rob S. says the Nero 3 is coming out. I didn't even hear of a Nero 3. Does that mean it's smaller? I've only been familiar with the Nero 5. I'm not keeping up apparently, so thanks for the heads up. Mad Shep, I'm so glad you came. Enjoy your first time here. Check out my channel because there's lots of good video where you can see the tank itself and it's not just something blurry in the background. Claudius says, how's it going? How are those flow accelerators doing? How much of a difference does it make on your size tank? Well, these right here are from VCA. They're called RFGs, which stands for Random Flow Generators. They're 1 inch, and they're working great. Before that, I had something made by a different company that wasn't 3D printed, and it was longer, so it was more of an eyesore. And I know the angle you're looking at looks pretty long, but they're actually, I mean, that is one right there, and that is the second one right there. So you're looking at something in your tank about this long that is moving all that water. I love flow accelerators. I've been using penductors of some kind since I set the tank up. So it's the best way to get a lot of flow in your tank without costing any more money because you have water shooting through it. And the VCA RFGs have these like coils inside them. Maybe Andrea can put a link. The shape of the way the water flows through it, it actually makes the water come out in different angles, constantly changing completely of its own accord. That's why it's said random. And they set up these booths at Macno where you can watch, and they'll have this screen with all these little propellers, and then they have the nozzle, and you'll see one propeller spin, and then another one spin, and then this one spins, and this one spins, and that one spins, and this one spins, because it's randomly changing all the time, just the way the water moves through it. It's really neat. Jake says, would you recommend Wave or MP40 power heads? I'm a huge Ecotech fan, so I would be telling you that. But that's just like you saying Apple or Android. Now I'm going to tell you Apple. I love my VorTechs. I have 4 of them going right now, and I've been running them forever. These right here are the original ones I put on the tank in 2011, and they're still running. I've replaced the inside parts probably 3 times. No, not all of it, but I mean, I've had to replace like 3 of those heads, I think, in all that time, which is mathematically, that's still saving me money. And they're easy to clean. They run great. If there's a power outage, they continue to run with a battery backup made specifically to keep them flowing, where they can run for about 24 hours. So super to have those on my tanks, and that's why I trust them on every tank I have. Tyler, I just saw you mention this somewhere recently. I don't know if you mentioned it last week's stream or if you mentioned it inside Club Mila's Reef on Facebook. But yeah, how awful is it to lose all your fish to velvet? Velvet is so vicious. It's so quick. The fact you have one fish that's surviving is great. It's a starting point. But super depressing to watch your fish die. I'm so sorry to hear that. Did you figure out what caused it? What brought the velvet in? Did it come in on a new fish you bought and you acclimated? That's such a bummer. Linton says, have you tried using some food enhancers? Yes. I'm using a couple different things right now. One is a garlic elixir that is made by, I think it was Seachem. It's super expensive. And I was told that if I could put that in the food each day that it would make a difference. And so I started like a week ago. And I mean, this could take months to recover. I want her face to be back to the way it used to be. And I don't know. Like I said, maybe I have to actually put her in some kind of real thing. I have to find out. Someone that's smarter than me needs to know. Or I mean, knows what to do and will tell me. PMang6 says, what are your opinions on nano tanks in general? I love them. I think they're really pretty. And I like that they fit anywhere. As a matter of fact, a buddy of mine, he really wanted to build this one specific tank. And he spent months planning every bit of it with a drop down, and he was going to do this lighting and these pumps and this stand. He was going to get powder coated. He was super excited. But he said, Mark, I'm so depressed because I don't know when I'm going to actually do this tank. I've been planning it, but is it ever going to happen? And I said, why don't you just go buy a nano tank right now and set it up with a few things so you can feel happy that you have some salt water in your home again. And so he was like, yeah, I guess I could do that. And he went up to the fish store and he found a beautiful little tank in the stand, and he started getting livestock. And it was like 6 months later, he says, that was the best advice you could have ever given me. He says, I am so happy. I love my little tank. I know it's not the one I want, but this is really filling that need. And every time I come home from work, it's right there, and it's awesome. And he had a really pretty little tank. So yeah, nanos are great. You only have to worry about 2 things with nanos. Number 1 is salinity, so you got to stay on top of top-off, so be sure you're setting up some kind of a top-off system. And secondarily, temperature. With nano tanks, they're easy to overheat, or the summer can overheat them, so you want to be prepared to have a way to cool the tank or to warm the tank in the winter. So if you can keep those 2 things under control, then pretty much everything else is going to be pretty standard, easy to take care of. It's just the nano tank is a smaller body of water, so things can go wrong quicker because it's so small. There's no cushion to kind of let things adjust to what's going wrong. Where like with a 450-gallon system or a 20,000-gallon system, there's plenty of time to course correct and fix things before it spirals out of control. Now, I will tell you this, that when things do spiral out of control on a big tank, it costs a lot more money to fix it than it does on the small tanks. So like when someone says, oh man, my nitrates, they're so high. And I'm like, well, how high are they? I'm like, they're 100. I'm like, oh, okay, well, how big's your tank? Like 15 gallons. I'm like, well, change 7.5 gallons. It's that easy. You'll cut them down to 50 in one water change. And there's like, oh, it's so small you can get away with that. Where if I have 100, I've got to change 225 gallons of water in one water change. And then I have to do another one after that and another one after that. That's 775 gallons of water I'd have to mix up in 1 week flat. That is a lot of work, a lot of salt, a lot of water. So with the smaller tanks, you can fix things. And it's just, you got to stay on top of them. I think you have to be more observant with a smaller tank. I hope that answered all of your questions. Dave says, are you having any issues or have any suggestions or directions when using Phosphate RX with the Acclimating filter roller? No. I'm still running it, and I didn't really think about it. I probably should have turned it off while I was running Phosphate RX, so that way it doesn't just like keep advancing fabric, which it might have been doing that night. I don't even know. It really comes down to what you're trying to accomplish. The fleece that is included on that Clearacy, the micron level isn't as low as one of these 10 micron filter socks. So if it's 50 or 60, I mean, it's still going to trap particulates that are bigger than 60 micron, if that was their number. I don't know what their number is. But I could see how it might use a little bit more fabric that one night while you're dosing. But since we only dose it like every 4, 8, 10, 12 weeks, we're only talking about a few inches of fabric anyway. But I actually like to use my sock box and my 7-inch sock that's 10 microns and let everything dump into that. I just didn't do it. I just kind of like just put some in the tank and went to sleep. So that was my, it's a good question. I haven't come across anything, even when I use Reef and I feed my tank, which is this stuff right here. When I feed this into my tank, I haven't had to like disable the Clearacy, which in theory you probably would because this is a lot of particulates blown around. I just kind of let it do what it's going to do, and I have another roll on the shelf for when it gets expired and has to be replaced. Zach says, what's your opinion on homemade dry rock using porcelain, cement, rock salt, etc.? Well, that's kind of another version of your question earlier about homemade frag plugs. Yeah, people have done it. They've made their own rock because they wanted to save money. Myself, you're talking to a guy that doesn't want DIY rock. I don't even want man-made rock. I want reef rock. I want live rock from the ocean. That doesn't mean man can't make it, but I want them to make it, and I want them to stick in the ocean for 6 or 9 months and turn it over and get it covered in sponges and coralline and worms and feather dusters and tunicates and nudibranchs and mantis shrimp and anything that's out there in the ocean. I want it on that rock, and I want to get that rock as quickly as I can so it won't die off and put it in my tank for the nice biodiversity that is a reef. But making your own, yeah, you can save some money. I do know you're going to need to do your research. You've already looked at some ingredients, which is fine, but you also have to look at how you cure it before you put it in your tank. And I believe, and someone can correct me, or like I said, Google will correct me, so I'm not even going to be right. I know I'm not right. But you're going to make the rock, and then you're going to put it in salt water, or maybe you're going to put it in fresh water for X amount of weeks, because the concrete mix that you're using will do something to the calcium level and make it spike. And you need that number to come all the way down. So that's why I'm saying research this. Find out what is entailed in this. Watch some YouTube videos and find out exactly how it works to make the rock safe for your tank. And then after it's gone through all of that, that's soaking in fresh water. Then you probably transfer into salt water and then put it through another cure. Maybe use something like Live Rock Enhanced to get some bacteria on it. And then eventually it's ready for your tank. But it's not like you can make rock this week and then put it in your tank in a couple of weeks. That's probably not going to happen. Carrie says, can you make a calcium reactor? No, I cannot. I have a rule, I don't make anything round. Linton says, my yellow Tang had lateral line and I took the carbon off the tank and added vitamins to the nori. Seems to have worked. Well, I don't think that the problem that this coal Tang has is lateral line. I mean, there's a hole in the head, which is basically the definition of lateral line, but the lateral line is perfect on all of my tanks. So I feel like that's not the case. Let me move this up. They're really struggling here against the substrate. Come on, here you go, guys. That should work a little bit better. But yeah, I do add vitamins to my tank from time to time as well. So in theory, it should be taking care of itself. I mean, I was told by a couple of people it was a nutrient deficiency. That's why I've been putting in the nori on a regular basis to help her fatten up. I mean, she's fat. She just has this weird stuff on her head that I wish was gone. Sorry, neck hurts. Bill says, I've started to see some dinoflagellates. It's a stringy slime algae with clear bubbles on everything. How should I treat this before it gets out of hand? Well, my initial gut reaction is to siphon it out immediately. You know, whatever's in the tank that's, ugly or evil, get some tubing and siphon that out, and then replace your water that you threw out. And kind of reduce its mass. That's the first step. If it's just a little bit, the Livestock Enhance might get rid of the rest of it, because you're putting one bacteria to compete with another bacteria, and hopefully will eradicate it before it can take hold. So that's what I would suggest. I would manually remove what I can and try Livestock Enhance. There are other products on the market like Dino X that take 21 days of treatments to remove it. Others have used 3% peroxide to treat it, and you can check that out in Google. So you have some other options available to you, but I think Livestock Enhance would be what I would try to solve that. Tyler says, I have a 90-gallon tank with a 40-gallon Refugium, but my test kit says I have 180 plus nitrates, which doesn't make any sense. I mean, I don't have any algae, don't have any to wipe off the glass but once a week. Your nitrates could be high without showing algae. Nitrates are a part of the algae, but phosphates are the other part. So it's a chance your nitrates are crazy high. It can happen. It happens to all of us. I would get another test kit and I would test again. Or I would bring a water sample to the fish store and have them test it in front of you and see what number they get. If your tank really does have super high nitrate, you're going to have to do something to bring them way down. And you need to find out what's adding them to your tank, which could be something like bioballs in a wet-dry sump that some people still to this day use. Bioballs are designed specifically to convert ammonia into nitrate as quickly as possible as it drips down in the dry section of the wet-dry sump. So removing bioballs from the sump is the first step to reducing the nitrate problem. It could also be bio-wheels, bio-bale, bio-sponge. Any of those things that are bio in name oftentimes are what we don't want on our reef tank. Not everything with bio, but just, like I said, bio-balls, bio-bale, bio-sponge, bio-wheels. Those are all nitrate creators, and you have to stop adding nitrate if you want the nitrate to come down. So big, huge water changes would cut that down really quickly, but double check the numbers even right in the first place. Like you said, it doesn't make sense. So maybe your kit is bad. Your number's 180, so I'm assuming that's an API kit. So just buy another $10 kit and try it one more time and see what you get on the next kit. Matter of fact, a lot of people put down the API kit, the brand, like, oh, API is crap. And I actually went up to the API vendor at Aquashala and said, how do you get out of bed in the morning when everyone says your tests are crap? And I meant that in a nice way, but it's really hard to ask that question. But I wanted to kind of find out, why would you keep selling something everyone complains about it all the time? And he told me, we sell so many kits that the people that are complaining doesn't matter. And I was like, wow. And I mean, that's just an off-the-cuff conversation. That's not, like some kind of official statement from API. But they've been around for a very long time. They have test kits that are affordable for any hobbyist. They may not be the most accurate, but they definitely can get you some ballpark information. Like, did the ammonia go up? Did the nitrate go up? You can find out. But my preference for test kits is typically ELOS, and or devices like the Mindstream or the Trident, that kind of stuff too, obviously. But I use API for nitrate, and it doesn't bother me a bit. I mean, who cares who made the kit? As long as it's giving me some kind of a number I can believe, then it's good enough. It gives me something to work with. So I don't put those down. If somebody buys those, or if they started with the master test kit from API, yeah, we're gonna say, well, you need an alkaline, you need a calcium, you need a magnesium, you need a phosphate. That's not in the master test kit, but it doesn't mean the other stuff is invalid. It's still usable. But I don't think it should quite get the attack that I see online. People really pounce on it, and I don't think that's necessary. Nanofish says they have an Achilles Tang, and you like them better than the Gem Tang. The Achilles is beautiful. I've never tried to keep one because I heard they're really hard. And I've got a friend who's kept one now for many years and has even moved to a new home and moved the tank, and the Achilles is still super healthy. And Achilles are really known to attract ick. They just seem to break out in it. And I remember when I was at the Georgia Aquarium, they had this huge, I think it's 550,000 gallon reef, and they had a marine biologist that was in charge of that reef. And she said, I want to bring in Achilles tangs. And her boss is like, no, we're not getting Achilles. That's just a nightmare. And she says, no, I know how to bring them in, keep them safe, make sure they're quarantined, and put them in here, and we're going to have these beautiful Achilles. And she did it. And it was really kind of a cool story, because that place is so big, they can add like 50 or 100 fish, and it's like nothing. And, but you don't want to add fish that's going to suddenly create a huge viral problem, like the person we talked about earlier that had velvet and it killed all their fish. You don't want to have these ick magnets swimming around causing chaos for all the rest of the fish. But she apparently knew the secret ingredients to making sure those things were healthy. And I was like, well, tell us. What do we have to do to be successful with an Achilles tang? I mean, come on, don't hold back. So they need a lot of swimming space. They can be very aggressive. So even though they're beautiful, they're probably going to be the last fish you put in your tank, because it won't allow anything new to enter the tank thereafter, more than likely. I mean, yeah, you can try the Peacemaker and see if that helps, and maybe it will. But that's pretty much the reputation, that they're kind of a reef bully. So you usually get all the fish, and then you add the Achilles as the last fish, and you put in a lot of flow. And it is not uncommon to see an Achilles tang swimming right toward a Powerhead like it's on a treadmill, and just swimming, like Dory. So, something to know, something to keep in mind. Odile says, how many tangs can you have in a 75-gallon tank? 2 small ones would probably be okay. I probably wouldn't go higher than that. I would focus on a couple of pretty ones. I would like a good work tang, like the coal, the yellow-eyed coal. Would be a good one because it cleans the glass, it pecks at the rock, it bites at the substrate. So it's a good, useful, practical fish. And then maybe one other tang. Maybe the yellow. Probably not a hippo tang, because the hippo tang or the blue regal tends to chew on zoanthids, and a lot of people like their zoanthids. So I wouldn't recommend that one. Let's see. Gunny asked the question, where can I get sponges? I can't find any. You'll probably have to find them online. There's a place in Florida. The name in my brain is like Gulf Ecosystems, but it's probably wrong. And there's liveplants.com. They're out of Florida too. And I believe if you go into their websites and kind of dig in, you'll find categories with sponges. And you can find some and see if there's one you'd like to have that you could add to your system. Cliffy Poos is reaching out to us from Ireland tonight. It's not even night over here. It's only 3:30. I am clearly way behind in the conversation. Let me see if I can scroll a little bit faster here. John asks the question, can I remove the 2 large rocks from my 20-gallon water box and use a toothbrush to scrape off the algae? Will it cause a spike in the system? And also, I might find my missing pistol and shrimp goby. I don't like scrubbing rock. I don't find the benefit outweighing the... Well, I mean, there's no benefit. It's a downhill thing. It just doesn't work out. You didn't mention what kind of algae. I mean, obviously, if this is like cyanobacteria, it just comes off with a toothbrush right in the tank. If you're talking about hair algae, turf algae, bryopsis, these are algae that have taken root on the rock, and you need to pinch it off, put your hand in a bowl of water, shake off your fingers, and then reach in and pinch it off, and back in the bowl of water, and rinse your fingers, and do this over and over until you can't stand it anymore. And then the next day, resume, and keep doing that, and doing that, and doing that, until you've gotten rid of most of it. And then add a cleanup crew. You've got a 20-gallon tank, so you have to put 20 critters in there to clean the tank. And if you reduce the bulk of it, you will then have what's left for the cleanup crew to eat, which is what you want. The thing is that if you brush it off, you're taking a toothbrush or a real scrub brush and you're going across the rock. And as you do it, it's tearing off some. It's not removing it all. There's still some left behind, which will grow again. It also will spread it loose everywhere. And when you put the rock back in the tank, all the little bits will just blow loose and land somewhere else and regrow again. Plus, the risk of brushing anything is, I'm trying to think of an example where, you know, things that you people have done as well. Like you've got a toothbrush, and if you were, you know, let's say the toothbrush was damp and you took your finger and rubbed it against the surface of the bristles, you'd get spattered with moisture on your face, correct? So the same principle, when you're brushing the rock, you're spattering that stuff out into the air, and you could actually inhale some of the stuff you're brushing off the rock, which would include bacteria that does not belong in your lungs. So I'm not a proponent of scrubbing things or using pressure washers or even dip them in some kind of solution where you're inhaling the fumes. You know, these are things we want to avoid at all costs. So I'd much rather you reach in the tank and pick off what's bothering you and do it repeatedly every single day until you've reduced it. And then add that cleanup crew of starving, hungry critters that will just go in and voraciously get the last of it. And then that should be it. It's not a big deal. The problem should be resolved within a week, if you do what I'm saying. You definitely need to reduce your phosphates. You want to pick off the big stuff, and you want the cleanup crew. That's my recommendation. I don't think that's a hard, fast rule, Macy. Or Macy's daddy. I could see where there could be a benefit to having one, but if the heater has an internal thermostat of its own, then it'll work perfectly fine with the Apex. Like I said, I think what they're referring to, and what I believe you mentioned even above this comment, was that it was a titanium heater that's literally a metal rod with a wire that just plugs into something. That right there would be risky. So yeah, I could see what they'd recommend a controller, which in that case might be like the Renko I was talking about. I really kind of am bummed out that Cobalt stopped selling their little device. It kind of looked like the old mechanical timer, and you could plug that in, set the thermostat on it, and then plug your heater into it. And I thought, man, that's awesome. It's like $100, or maybe it was 99. I don't know. It wasn't horribly expensive, and I thought it's a great safety, so you're not trusting the internal thermometer of the heater. But it must be specifically, not all heaters, because that's not, I've never heard that. So it must be specifically for the titanium ones. It's an interesting question. Callie says, could pulsing zinnia be responsible for acans not opening up all the way? I don't think so. The pulsing zinnia would have to be like literally in contact with the acan, and I feel like the acan is aggressive enough, you know, protective enough, that it would probably sting the zinnia back and possibly melt it away. So if your acans aren't opening up, maybe there's something not right in the water quality. The benefit of the pulsing zinnia is if the pulsing zinnia is happy, that usually indicates that the water's pretty decent. But could be the acans need to be fed some specific food. Reef is great for broadcast feeding the entire tank, but you can also take some frozen food, thaw it out, and use a pipette and turn off the flow in the tank and squirt the food at the acans, and that way they can grab it with their little tentacles and grab some food. But I don't see how zinnia could affect them. Now, any other coral in the tank that could be affecting them, the best solution is to run some fresh carbon in a reactor to polish the water for 3 days and just kind of remove whatever's in the water and then see if they look better. It could be something like that. Like, for example, I've got over here where my finger is pointing, I have some pink hammers. So very small hammers, they're pink. And when I got my first frag many, many years ago, there was 3 heads. And I have noticed that I've lost 2 heads recently, and I thought, that's weird. What happened to that? And then the next one over, it was receding and almost dead, and now it's dead. I think something like a copper band butterfly is hitting those polyps and killing them. And I was thinking, if I don't do something soon to protect that coral, I'm going to end up with a total loss. And I mean, they go way back. I probably got that coral back in like 2005. So, I mean, I've had it for a very long time. And, you know, I used to have a volleyball-sized colony in my 280-gallon reef. Oh, I wanted to show you guys something. Hang on. I'll be right back. I have to unplug the microphone again. So recently, I was on Facebook, and you know how they do those on this day, the memories thing? It'll show you stuff from what's happened on this day years and years ago. And one of my memories came up was this book right here, The Coral Reef Aquarium. So this book was published by Tony Vargas through Two Little Fishies. And what it is it's a whole bunch of reef tanks in here. And I had forgotten, which I know is crazy, but I did. This was my old reef back in the day. So I had this 280-gallon reef for almost exactly 6 years. I know it looks blurry. It won't focus. Focus. It's focusing on me. Anyway, so I had this tank, and over here it shows my entire setup and how I operated it. And they did that with lots of reef tanks in this book. So there's Tim Plaza, there's Stuart Bertram out of England, Ching Chai out of Thailand, Julian Sprung's 314-gallon reef tank. There's Julian right there, standing by his tank. And this is a really cool book. Let me see when this came out. (2011). So I don't know if you can find this, but if you were kind of like, what are some of the best reef tanks and how do they run them? If you're trying to like learn from the experts, this might be a good book to add to your collection. So it's The Coral Reef Aquarium by Tony Vargas. And it's pretty cool. And I forgot that I was in this book. So I wanted to share that with you guys. I thought that's kind of neato. It was a long time ago. All right. Daniel says, are you making the guards for the VorTech MP40s? I'm tired of cleaning those sponges. I created something called the VorTech cage a year and a half ago. There's a couple of really short videos on my on this channel. I mean, by short, I mean like 2 minutes. It's like the shortest videos I've done. And I created this cage that fits around the VorTech completely with all these slits. And it has to be held onto the glass somehow with some kind of magnet. And that's what I have in the Anemone cube. And it's been like that forever. And I take that cage off maybe once a month, go to the sink, hit it with some water, knock off any vermitids that are on there, clean off any bubble algae tries to grow, just basically make sure it's cleared up of any garbage. And then I put it back in the tank and the coralline doesn't die. It's amazing. I mean, I'm not using hot water, maybe that's why, but you would think the tap water on it would just like turn to bone white and it would just flake off. But instead the thing is purple around my VorTech. And so if you look at any pictures I share on Instagram that end up on Facebook of the Anemone cube, you'll see the cage in the corner of the picture. That's been running perfectly, and I've stopped having to wash sponges forever ago. That little cage is kind of hard to make. I believe I charge like about $45 to make it. And I make it with a piece of acrylic that goes up, and then you put like a couple cleaning magnets at the top of your tank, which is kind of an eyesore for some people, but it keeps it exactly where it needs to be. It's too thick and heavy to just hold on to the wet side. It needs to be supported. So I've sold a handful of those to a few people that were adamant to have one. But yeah, that's what I've done. But I'm sure someone out there has made some kind of perfect one out of 3D printing that you could use instead if you wanted to go that route. I saw one that I personally didn't really like the look of. I mean, it fit around it perfectly, and it had like a million tiny holes in it. But I just felt like it had to be restricting the flow because the holes were so tiny. I just thought they were too small. That's my personal opinion. I mean, I've seen other people that created something with a plastic ring and then what looked like netting like you'd use on the screen door. and they put that around to keep things out of the vortex. So, I mean, there's different things. The cage worked out really well, but it's not the most beautiful thing in the world, but it definitely works, and it lasts forever. So if you want to go that route, you can contact me directly. Mojave says, how is the new wrasse doing? It's doing great. There it is, right there. There it is right there. I can't believe it. I'm so happy about that. That is a miracle. And it was funny because a lot of the people commenting when I mentioned I was introducing this new fish said, oh yeah, I've had that. That's not a big deal. But everyone knows these are really hard to keep successfully. They're not considered an easy fish. So the cleaner wrasse is actually a pretty cool fish to put in the tank. I'm watching the other fish. I've noticed some new habits that don't make me super happy. I've noticed that sometimes the copper band will be hiding under this coral right here, and sometimes Spock will turn really suddenly because I think the cleaner wrasse found something and picked it off, and you know, it's sort of like someone pinching you or stinging you, and Spock doesn't like that. So I feel like it could be causing a little bit of chaos, but not enough to remove it. But I was hoping it would help kind of clean things up and maybe even work on that coal tang if there was something on its face that needed to be devoured. That was kind of my thought process. Jay, you can contact Ecotech and they will have whatever you need to get that pump running again. Drivers can be replaced, the RF card can be replaced, the wet side can be replaced, the dry side can be replaced. I mean, nothing's forever, and I have replaced a couple MP40s over the last 6 years or so, but longevity-wise, I feel like they're a great pump. Saif asks the question, 9 hours or 11 hours of light period for a reef tank. I really like 9 hours. So that is, for me, a comfortable day. Now, I can understand having another hour of blue at the beginning and a blue at the end to make it a little bit longer. I don't even like full intensity for 9 hours. I like full intensity for like 3 or 4 hours, and then it's tapering down on the other ends. So basically, if you were doing a bell curve, I would like the light to start, get up here, go up to here, stay nice and high for a long time, and then start coming down again, and then come down, and then finally it'd fade out over that 9 to 11 hour period. But I only want the high noon to be a few hours, like high noon when you go outside. And it's bright and it's hot, and you know, it lasts a couple hours, and then it starts tapering off. It's not as intense. That's how I feel it should be done on a reef tank. Mariano asks the question, how can I get sponges? I've had my tank for 2 years, but still no sponges. Well, you got to have a seed. There has to be something. I've actually got quite a bit of natural sponge growing out of my rock, but nothing is like showcase worthy. It's just interesting. And occasionally I'll show a picture of a spot that I like to my tank where you can see I've got white. I've got one that looks like an acropora in the anemone cube that's really kind of cool. I've got some that are purple with like tubes coming off. They're kind of cool looking. I have had some really cool yellow sponge that's sort of invasive, but I like it. So I don't really care that it tries to invade space. It's never gotten out of control. And also there are certain fish that will eat some sponge. So it's possible that maybe in your tank, you have a flame angel or coral beauty or a cherub angel. And if you have any of those and you have sponge even starting to grow, that fish will just eat it, and that's why you see none in your tank. That's a possibility too. But otherwise, you might just need to get some from somebody. Mr. Reef Buster says, would you recommend adding an RBT? I'm assuming that's red bubble tip, anemone, as the first livestock in a new tank. No, I don't recommend that in a brand new tank. I really like a tank to be running for a long time, like 9 months before you add one. But if you don't want to wait that long, or if you've got a lot of experience and you're setting up another tank, You could probably add it sooner because you have experience, you know what you're doing. But no, it would not be the first thing I put in the tank. The first thing I'd put in the tank would be a fish. Shortly thereafter, I'd be putting in some cleanup crew. Then I'd put in a frag or two and see how they do before I start adding, some serious livestock. And that way I don't end up killing stuff because I was going in the wrong order and things weren't ready yet. So no, I would not go with that first. Ben says, I'm using a 200 micron filter sock and floss inside my sump. Am I missing out by not using a finer sock? No, the whole reason for the 10 micron was for phosphate RX, for dosing lanthanum in your tank. If you're using Phosband L from Two Little Fishies, for example, Brightwell has a thing, I think it's called Phosphate E or something like that. These are all products that help remove phosphate from the tank by turning it into a flake or a flocculant, and then the filter sock traps it, and the 10 micron traps it in a matter of hours. You can't put a 10 micron sock on your sump and run it for 3 to 5 days. You'll basically see it overflowing by the next day because it clogs up that crazy fast. I mean, the 10 micron sock is the exact same micron as this sediment filter for an RO system. That's how fine it is. So I would only use it for when you have a deep cleaning where you're trying to trap everything quickly and get back to a pretty tank again. So like if you're going to do a really intense cleaning, you could hook up a 10 micron sock. You could take a turkey baster to your sand bed and puff it up to create a lot of dust, let it all get caught in the sock, and then a few hours later remove the sock and the reef's back to normal, and your water won't be a cloud for another 9 or 10 hours. It catches it sooner and traps it really, really well. Cliffy Poos says, I was watching on another video on a different channel which suggested adding buffer to the top-off water to prevent a pH drop in the system. Any thoughts? Yes, I would not even do that. You don't need to worry about your pH, and that's something people talk about pH all the time. And I have an article on my website that's called Don't Chase the pH. Now, unless you have chronic problems with your reef, if your tank is doing well and it's 7.7 to 7.9 every single day, that's still fine. And adding buffer to your top-off water is going to possibly cause a little bit of chaos if things get out of hand. What if too much top-off water is added at once? The buffer is probably soda ash, and that's what most pH buffers are. And so it's a higher alkalinity. It's pumping into your tank until the top-off system turns off. And let's say your protein skimmer is going crazy and it's dumping water all over the floor, and your top-off is running water into the sump as fast as it can for as long as it can until it finally runs out of water. I wouldn't do it. I have never buffered my RODI water in 22 years. Okay, that's a long time. I got an RO system 18 years ago, so let's say I haven't done it in 18 years. There's no reason to add anything to your RODI water. That is just pure water. You want it nice and clean. You want your container clean. You don't want any TDS in that container. I don't add anything to that thing that I can avoid. Even when I put in like a brand new pump for the top-off system, I will rinse that off in water first before I put it in, so I'm not adding a bunch of TDS on a dirty pump into my vessel. But the whole point is, well, what's going on with the pH of the tank? Why is it so low? And typically, if you have your salinity right, your alkalinity right, your calcium and your magnesium right, and your temperature right, pH will take care of itself. So that's why I never even think about pH. It is like the least important thing for me ever, and I almost never look at it. And that's my answer. Odile says, I can't get my fish to eat the nori. Do you have any suggestions? The first thing you can do is use a very small piece. So, for example, this is a Ziploc bag, but no matter which way I zip it, it's always closed. You put something like this in the tank and it's moving, it can spook a fish. If you put in something this small, the fish might not notice it. But you can hold this in the water and rub your fingers back and forth and make the flakes blow around, and you may see the fish eating it. And it may realize, hey, that's food. And then you could put in a slightly larger piece, not this whole piece, like let's say a fourth of it, just use a small piece. You can attach it to a PVC pipe with a rubber band and put it down on the sand. You can wrap it around a rock with a rubber band and let the fish nip at it. Those are a couple of ways of doing it. But my point is, use a little tiny bit, and then as they get more and more familiar with it, you can add a little bit more and a little bit more, and then soon one day you're putting in a whole sheet and it's like, yes! Like my fish do, and they all get excited to get a mouthful of nori. But I wouldn't, I think that's it. I think they're just spooked because it's big and it's moving and they're like, what the heck is that? I've never seen anything that shape in the ocean before. And I think that might be the problem. So. Tyler says, what do you think of the lower quality bulk carbon available on eBay? I know you advocate carbon for only about 3 or 4 days, and I'm in agreement. My tank looks great for about 3 to 5 days when I put in a fresh bag of carbon. I don't know that you need to fear the carbon. I guess it matters what brand it is. I can tell you this, there was an article many years ago that was comparing all the carbons. Who makes the best carbon, you know? And ironically, it was Diamond was the brand, and guess where that was sold? It was a Walmart brand in their pet section. And you could buy Diamond carbon. It was the best carbon you could get at that time. I thought that was pretty interesting. The carbon that I use actually comes from Blue Life USA. And they use it in ClearFX Pro. And I bought a ginormous bag of it, like 80 pounds of carbon a decade ago. And it was a huge, huge bag, you know, like the kind you throw over your shoulder. And I cut it open, and then I took a whole bunch of Ziploc bags and I filled them up individually, because once you open it, you're exposing it to humidity and, you know, air and all that. So I just scooped it into, you know, like 20 of these bags, and I've been using them. And I'm finally at the very end. It's time for me to get one more super bag. But I would just want to know where the carbon came from that you're looking at on eBay. If it's made for aquariums, you know, like there's some brand being mentioned, you know, like Marine Land carbon, or that might make me feel better than just unknown carbon. So that might be worth looking at. You might also check Amazon, because that way you can check the brands and the manufacturers and know a little bit more about who's behind it. Because, okay, so there's this new stuff that came out earlier this year called Aquachar that looks like stuff that came out of a fireplace. And they were touting how great it is and how it'll make your pH go up and how it lasts for months and months, and it's amazing. And it may be perfect for the freshwater industry. That might be exactly what they need. But a lot of us saltwater people were like, And then I only heard through rumors because I didn't dig into it myself. There was also discussion of finding metal inside the Aquachar, like staples and nails that were in pallets that had been burned away. And that metal was finding its way into the Aquachar, which then could end up in your system inside a reactor or a mesh bag or something. So that's kind of something to avoid, something to watch out for. So I'm not saying don't buy it. I'm saying do your research if that's something you want to go with. They gave me a sample and I got nervous enough I didn't even use the sample. So I like using the stuff from Blue Life USA. They don't sell carbon. They sell ClearFX, and I said, give me a big giant bag, and I made them. I twisted their arm, and I'm going to try again. And hopefully the owner will say okay. But yeah, otherwise I'll be buying it like you guys do somewhere. Archaeology, I believe is how you say that, said, in your opinion, what is the minimum tank length for a powder blue Tang? How many gallons? I would like to see that Tang put in a tank that's 6 feet long, minimum. And that would be 180 gallon, 240 gallon, 300 gallon, or my tank's 7 feet, so 400 gallon. You know, something big, because they are big swimmers. They're very active. And beautiful fish. Also an ick magnet. How are we doing on time? 2 hours? All right. Oh, I should mention right now, while I got your full attention, I am going to leave town next week, and I'm going to Dubai for a week. So I leave on Wednesday and I come back, I guess, the following Tuesday, Wednesday. And that means that I will not be doing a live stream next Saturday because I will be away, like literally out of the country. And so I just want to remind you guys that, in case you're looking for me. I don't know how much I'll be online. Tyler asked the question, what are your thoughts on DIY plywood tanks? I think that's pretty cool, and some people do it and seem to do it successfully. Make sure you do a lot of homework on it, and yeah, why not? Mujuf says, I don't even have a reef tank, and I watched almost all your videos, Milo's Reef. Thanks for watching. I do appreciate people tuning in for these long discussions and the other shorter videos, too. I look forward to being able to release more videos on a regular basis. I also mentioned, I think last week's stream, that I have these Facebook videos that were never released to YouTube, and I was asking, you know, how should I introduce them to you so you know? And I'm thinking maybe I'll make a thumbnail with a little Facebook logo on it so you know that it came from Facebook. That way you can decide if you want to see it again if you happen to have seen it on YouTube, on Facebook a year ago. I mean, I don't know. I was just trying to find a way to like identify them so you know what they are, you know, why they're coming out of nowhere. So each of those videos were short and they got to the point pretty quickly on whatever it is I had to say, and it ended with a question answer thing here, just like this, but edited. And a lot of people want the edited content versus the live stream that just kind of is a flowing conversation of me saying whatever I'm saying. Tyler is asking a lot of questions today. Do you have any wrasses in your tank? Well, I have the cleaner wrasse, and that is the only one in here at this point. Hey, Diacanthus Reef is talking about the Moorish idol here and the Achilles, and how they did really well in a cylinder versus being inside a rectangular tank. I just want to mention, there's a guy out of New York who has a monster tank. I mean, like 20,000 gallons or something. And he put in a bunch of Moorish idols that were shoaling together. And he's been sharing lots of pictures on Facebook in the Saltwater and Aquarium Reef group. And I'm just like, I want to see this tank in person someday. I mean, it's all in his home, and he's got this monster filtration going on down below, I guess, or behind. It's incredible, and he's been sharing a lot for the last few days. I had to subscribe to him. But man, and the thing is, the tank is so big that when you look at the fish in it, they look like they're this big because it's such a giant tank. It makes those yellow tangs seem really small. Now, I'm sure a few of them were actually little baby yellow tangs, but there's some normal ones in there, but those normal ones looked itty-bitty because the tank was so monstrous. I don't know the footage, but I think the gallons are around 20,000 gallons. It's incredible. I hope to, at some point, get a chance to visit him in person one day and see more. But heard he's a super nice guy, and he's put a major investment building this incredible system in his home. And he's a diehard hobbyist. I mean, he does a lot of it himself. He's taking care of it on his own. He had a beautiful tank of the month that was all SPS corals, I don't know, a few years ago, that was stunning. And this is his newest thing, and it's ginormous, and it's full of really... Someone even said, what is your most expensive fish? And I think it was something he got from Poma Labs. And those guys are breeding conspiculatus angels and some of the other, what we would consider really high-end angels, where a fish is like $5,000 each. It's tank raised, but it's still $5,000, and he's got one of those in his tank, for example. That's one example of what he's bought. Aaron says, can someone let me know where to learn to program in Apex? Well, YouTube is your friend, number one. Any videos that Carlos has done for CoralView, he does great Apex tutorials. Apex itself has a bunch of videos, as well as a really good manual on their own website that you can work your way through step by step to learn how things work. Plus, they have a group on Facebook where you can post pictures and say, this is my settings, this is my code, what am I doing wrong? And someone will usually chime in within minutes or hours and tell you what to change, like on one line, and fix it, and it's working perfectly. Also, Neptune Systems has a group, or I'm sorry, a physical forum like the old days that is got every question that's ever been asked has been asked and answered and documented, and it's there. You don't have to go ask that question again for the 1000th time because it's already been asked and answered on that forum. So you can go right into their community forum, which is not the group on Facebook, it's on their website. And you'll get all kinds of help, and you can read threads. You can, of course, ask your question, but like I said, odds are it's already been asked 100,000 times, because Apex has been around for so long, and they can help you out. On my own website, I have an Apex page that is in my articles section, and I show all of my code that's in my Apex as of right now. It might be a little bit out of date. I might need to update it again. But it has all my code, so if I were to ever lose my Apex, I could actually open up that page, and I could look at the code, and I could basically type in everything and get myself right back where I was going in a matter of a few hours. Also, there's a trick in Apex Fusion that you may want to do, and that is to save a PDF file of your programming, so you have a permanent file on your computer in case there ever something went wrong, so you can basically use it as a reference point to get another one going. Or let's say you're upgrading and you want to copy, you would then copy and paste step after step after step, or module after module. So, and there's some really great tasks built into the Apex that will help you do a lot of things. There's a whole bunch of super easy to use settings in the Apex. And then there is the advanced, which is what I like, where I actually code the lines of what I want. So I'm actually using words like if, then, oscillate this, I'm defer that. I use all the codes, but they have much simpler where you can just put in the temperature you want, and you want to be alerted if the temperature gets to this point, and you hit submit and you're done. So you don't have to, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, but there's so much good documentation out there. It's just a matter, it's at your fingertips. You just have to look it up. Hey, Jason, thank you very much. I guess I should say happy Thanksgiving to all of you, because I will be offline next week. I'll be flying through the sky on Wednesday. Bud's Lounge says, are the Seachem Ammonia alert tags or badges any good? Should I trust it? They're great for like a quarantine or hospital tank, because that's where ammonia can rise really quickly. We don't usually use something like that in a reef tank, because we don't even put livestock in the tank till the cycle is over. And once it's over, ammonia should not come back unless you kill half your tank. And if you kill half your tank, the ammonia's up. You don't need a badge to tell you that, because everything's dead. So that's pretty much it. There you go. This was the ACAN question from earlier. This person had ACANs that weren't happy for about 2 weeks and discovered the dwarf angel was picking at them. Once that fish was removed, the corals started fattening up and getting happy again. So that happens. So sometimes when you're thinking something's not right with corals, stand back in a dark room where you're out of sight and just watch and see what your animals are doing. And it could be it's a fish-related situation. And it's nothing to do with parameters. It's nothing to do with stinging. It's somebody is causing a little bit of chaos. Daniel says, I wonder how everyone stores their salt. I can't keep it away from humidity. Thanks. Best case is to have your bag of salt in a bucket. So if you get a bag, you can actually take the bag and you can roll it down and put a clip, or you can tape it down so it's sealed, and then put it in a bucket and seal the lid. That will keep the moisture out of it. Don't dip a wet cup in your salt like when you're scooping. Your cup should be completely dry. Like the Solo cup, for example. I'll use a Solo cup, or I used to use like a glass, a Pyrex type of 2-cup measuring cup, and I would scoop and pour, but I kept it dry, so it was always dry going into the bucket of salt. And that way I don't have it clumping up. So that would be my recommendation. You can also, if it's, if you're buying like 50-pound bags of salt, that probably will fit after you use a little bit. What's left of the bag could be stored in one of those cereal Rubbermaid containers where it's sealed to keep moisture out. You can also buy desiccant packets and put them inside to help absorb, or even put in, like, I don't know, take some nylon stockings like women wear and put some rice in there and lay it on top of the salt, and that could help absorb any moisture possibly. But if you just have the bag sitting against the wall, odds are it's going to turn to a stone and it's going to be kind of impossible to use. So those would be my suggestions. Dawson's Reef says, do 2 of your frag racks fit in a 40 breeder tank? If they don't, I can make them a different size. I just have an example of one on my my system, on my website, and it was just some arbitrary size I picked. But we can look at your tank. I believe the 40 is like 36 long by, I think, 18 wide. Internally, it's probably more like 17.25 wide. So let's just say 17. So you're going to need frag trays to be around 16 inches or so. So yeah, that can be done. It can be a single tray too. Just let me know and I'll make you whatever you need. And that's not a problem at all. But they aren't like a certain size. The one on my website isn't a certain size designed for a certain tank. It was just something I made one time. And I do not make 2-level frag racks, no. A lot of people talking about Vibrant in the chat today. I've never used it, so I have no opinion on it. I'm just reading the comments. Hey, Master of Marine, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. Cliffy Poos says, enjoy your trip. Check out the Dubai Aquarium while you're there. I think that's part of the plan. I think that's one of the days I'll be visiting. And yeah, I'm going to take pictures and video stuff to share. I'm looking forward to it. I've never been there before. It's very exciting. Can't believe it's happening. Hi, Adnan. Can't wait to see you next week. I'm always like 20 minutes behind the chat because I try not to ignore anyone. Cindy says, finally the Reef Trace app is working on my old iPhone. Yeah, they had to keep doing updates to make something compatible in the Apple environment so it wouldn't crash. But that was only with the older phones. The newer phones didn't have that problem at all. Eric, not a problem. We'll put that in your order. I'm almost caught up with the chat. Oh my God. D3V1115H says, any thoughts on Coral and Zucht trace elements for corals? They're very popular. They've been around a long time. If you follow their recipe, you'll probably do really well. They are pretty known for creating that pastel-looking look of corals, which basically is a kind of a mad scientist way of maintaining a reef tank because you're being so specific in all these additives that it's, I mean, this sounds negative, and I don't mean it negative, I'm just being honest. It puts the reef right on the edge of collapse, but not getting there, because you're giving just enough of the stuff it needs that it makes everything really glow. Now, The cheaper method is you just put on the orange glasses and look at your reef, and it's really glowing. I mean, that would be the simple, $1 solution. But it is very popular. It became popular in Germany, especially popular in Poland. Another brand that's on the market that's I feel is similar is going to be the Aqua Forest. Those guys have really mastered how to make reef tanks. They have a whole group on Facebook full of gorgeous reef tanks. There's something about reef tanks and Polish hobbyists. I don't get it. They seem to be like the best guys in the world. I think they supersede most of the U.S. Hobbyists, honestly. I'm just always astounded by their tanks. We have a few great guys here in the U.S., but it seems like tank after tank after tank out of Poland looks fantastic, which is crazy because it's just not what you would think. You would never say, hey, if I had to pick a great hobbyist, what part of the world do you come from? Would you really think Poland? Would that be the first name that comes to mind? Or the first country? Nuts. Dicanthus Reef says, have you ever considered working with other acrylic CNC bit compatible materials such as ABS, PVC for building products? No, I'm an acrylic guy. I've never tried any of that stuff. That would be like a new thing with new solvents and new things to overcome. I know that like MRC builds stuff out of, I think, PVC, and they weld it with some kind of a thing. My brain is saying TIG welder, but it's putting like a bead of something that is like a red, it's not caulk, it's like a red plastic. And I was like, oh, that's really neat. And I didn't ask any questions because I was 100% sure it was proprietary and top secret. But it was really neat. All right, I'm wrapping this up. Everyone's saying I look like I'm dying. I'm not dying, I'm just, hurting. But I think we should end it a little bit early today. The thing I want you to remember is that it is Water Test Saturday, so please test your water. We talked a bunch about water parameters today. You definitely want to test everything. Write it all down. Take a picture of it. Share your results with us. Put your parameters in Reef Trace. Put some notes in Reef Trace if you changed some carbon, or you did a water change, or you need a dose per dibio, or any of those things. Super useful app. I do recommend it to a lot of people. I use it myself. I am a partner in it. I guess I'll throw a couple things on the screen here really quick for you guys. I should have done this at the beginning, but I didn't want to, so I'll scoot over here. Please shop at milasreef.com and buy things, because that helps keep me alive. And also, I want to put on here, our group is now coming up on 6,000 members. I'll come to this side. 6,000 members on Facebook. We have a lot of great people, and I delete people that are not friendly. So, and I mean, they don't get to come back. It's a one and done. You're either in and you're good, or you're out and you're gone forever. And I got rid of somebody recently who called someone a drama queen, and I was like, that's it, you're gone. And I didn't even think twice about it. I felt good about my decision because no name calling. There's no reason to label anyone. We're all learning together. And if people are starting to call people names or put each other down, it stifles the questions. If people here were being mocked during this chat and couldn't ask their questions, what would be the point of the video? What would be the point of the stream? I want you to feel safe and be able to ask questions, and whatever the question is, we're going to help you as best we can, and hopefully you'll listen, and hopefully you'll be successful and your tank will look even better. That's the whole point of the group, and that's why I set it up. So feel free to join. I added probably about 80 people to the group this week. And I mean, when I say I removed someone, it is so rare. I think out of the last year and a half, we've removed maybe 6 people, and maybe 5 people removed themselves. They just said, nope, I'm out of here. You guys are too nice. So, just so you know, I want you to be aware that that is a really great group if you're trying to get some daily help. And other than that, like I said, no stream next week. So I hope you guys have a great weekend. I'm going to go take a pill, and I'll see you guys online. Bye.